The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome everybody right here to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. Those listening here in the chat room and those listening from around the world, we appreciate each and every one. We've got a great show lined up for tonight, and I got a feeling it's going to go by real fast. With that, we have Barbara Duncan.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everybody saw the missile launch if it happened.
Oh, your voice is real low, Barbara.
Yeah, you're like two rooms away.
Yeah.
I was watching the missile launch.
Oh, did you get to see it go off?
No.
Oh.
It's on the East Coast, but I did watch it on NASA television.
Guess the EM pulse knocked out your audio.
Well, it's supposed to be going overhead here, so
yeah.
Patsy's in the chat room, so maybe she'll go outside the door and look and see if she can see it.
Well, there are actually two Starlinks and one that was supposed to have some sort of weird vibrational, should be able to see a shock wave go through.
Yeah.
All right, we got with us also Jeffrey Gould.
Hello. I guess that's better than a Steve Shock Lee wave.
Yeah.
And we have with us Tabby Cat Gash.
Hey, everybody.
And got a great guest lined up for tonight, and I got a lot of questions for our guests. So, and I'm sure that Barbara, Jeff, and Tabby does too. And hopefully we will get a lot from the chat room, which if you have a question tonight, you can private chat to H. Foister, Ceiling Cat, or Tabby, you in there?
Yep.
I don't see you.
Oh. Hang in there.
All right. If Tabby gets on, you can send the questions to her if you want.
Yep.
With that, though, Jeff, you want to introduce our guest?
Absolutely. Well, tonight's guest is Lynn McKenzie. She's born loving animals. Lynn's passion lies in helping others to attune and awaken to the teachings and wonders that all sentient beings wish to share. Lynn's greatest passion is helping people identify, foster, and embody their unique psychic, intuitive, animal communication and healing gifts. As Lynn got older, her affinity for animals grew, especially for horses. So I guess that's just wanting a stable environment. In 7th grade, her inner impulse was so strong that on a regular basis, she bicycled 26 miles round trip from her family home to the city in the country just to be near horses. So from childhood, she has also loved all things from the magical and invisible realms, psychic, intuitive, and healing. So welcome, Lynn McKenzie.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's my pleasure to be here.
I'm sorry about the stable pun. I know that was tacky.
That's okay.
Jeff's like it sometimes.
That's totally fine with me.
So, how did you find out that you had this ability that you got into being able to communicate?
You know, I would say it was a process for me. So I was born loving animals. I felt deeply connected to them. As a child, all I wanted was an animal. I wished for a dog or cat or anything my parents would let us have. Every birthday, every time we went to a wishing well, everything like that. And eventually they did get us a dog, but at first they weren't so keen on it. And, I think it was just through that and then getting very involved with horses as a teenager around 14 or so. I just kind of went from a normal kid to girl gone horse crazy almost overnight. And in spending all the time that I spent with animals, I always felt like really in tune with them, and that, I was communing with them. And then, remained an animal lover for the rest of my, years, until one day I learned about this training. I didn't even know this field existed, at one point. I mean, I was born a long time ago. So, so one day I heard about a training program for this, and I had been already, engrossed in doing every kind of healing and intuitive development training I could, and I went off and I took the training,
and I went,
and
where's
lo and
the
behold,
proof of
it all
like,
the dam broke.
What do you mean?
It all just
I've heard
started
this
coming through, and I truly am a believer that everyone can learn this. I believe we all have our own psychic, intuitive, and healing gifts. But I truly believe that given the right circumstances and information, that everyone can learn to do this.
Wow. So, do you talk to Mr. Ed?
I talk to animals. I haven't talked to Mr. Ed particularly, but I talk to animals, and predominantly now I teach others to do it. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and so mostly now my focus has been on all the training programs I offer, and writing my book, of course, that I just wrote.
Yeah, I hit the wrong button. That's why you was hearing the sound of the show that was playing on Para-X. So I got it fixed, though. So we got that straightened out. I'm sure that everybody else has got a ton of questions, so I'm not going to try and hog you here. I think, I guess there's a lot of other people that can communicate with animals, but do animals know that you can communicate with them and they seek you out to talk to you?
They often behave differently around me. I remember years ago when I was living in Toronto, and I got asked to come and speak to a parrot club that was in Guelph, Ontario. And that is like, about an hour's drive with good traffic, going west of Toronto. And, they wanted me to come and speak that evening. And I remember saying to the girl, I'm going to have to drive out there a lot earlier in the day, because I don't want to get in rush hour traffic, because then it could be 3 hours. So I said, I'm coming in early. And she said, okay, come straight to my house. We'll go for dinner, and then we can go to the parrot club. And when I got to her house, the parrots were doing all kinds of, they were in her kitchen in the bay window of the eating area in their cages and stuff. And they were doing all of this interesting stuff. And she said, they never do this. They never act like this. They completely know you're here and what you're here for, and that kind of thing. And, I have so many pictures from students showing me their animals interacting with me on their computer screen while I'm teaching a video or something, and they're watching it. So, I mean, so many, it's not even funny, especially cats. And they're batting at my face and whatever, putting their nose up to me and all kinds of things. So, I would say yes, but, I'm also of the belief that, it's not like I keep the lines of communication open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week kind of thing, just for my own sanity. But I do feel like animals do recognize that I understand them to a larger extent than some people might take the time to do.
It makes me wonder, that scene in Ghost with Whoopi Goldberg, and they find out that she can communicate with ghosts. So they're all lined up. Do animals do that too? She can talk to me. I have this to say. I need to say it now. And do they line up to talk to you?
I don't feel like it's really that way. I mean, one of the things is, I communicate with animals over a distance most of the time. I'm hardly ever in person with the animals anymore, in this new world of first of all, lockdown, and also, just technology and stuff. I have clients all over the world. So, but, I don't feel like it's like that, really. I mostly focus on it when, if I have a client, then I spend some time and I focus in on tuning into that animal. It's, I'm not one who just does it off the cuff every 5 minutes, do it with a different animal. Otherwise, I'd probably go insane. But I have had animals, and I know that you read my book, Tabby Cat, and there is a story in my book of an animal that I'd already worked with a number of times that had me connect with their person due to something that went on. I won't share that story right now, but
Yep.
So that kind of thing can happen, and in 2007, my golden retriever Jigs, who really is the one who was a catalyst for me to get into this work. I feel like he came into my life to do this. I mean, as a result of him, I took new training, changed my career, and moved to a different country. I moved from Canada to the U.S., to Arizona. And so Jigs, when he crossed over, he came to me in 1993, and that's when that's when I started my practice, really. But when he crossed over in 2007, the first night he was gone, he actually came to me in my dream time and said to me, I can help. And he named this dog. The dog's name was Gulati. I changed the name in my book because didn't have a. If I didn't have a waiver from people, I couldn't say the real name. But he came to me in my sleep, and this dog had stopped eating. And he was elderly, but he was just literally starving himself to death and was not eating anymore. And Jigs came to me, and Jigs' favorite thing in the world to do was eat. He was a golden retriever. They eat everything, even things that aren't edible. And he came to me in my dream time that night and said, I can help this dog. And he said, I'll eat vicariously through him, kind of thing. And he did that. And the dog started eating the very next day. It was quite amazing.
Wow. Yeah, I do remember that story. We have a question in the chat room from another person named Kat. And she wanted to know how you are actually able to communicate with them. Do you hear them? Do you get images? What type of voice, or, what do you actually get? What kind of, is it just a vibration? Is it a feeling, or is it a voice? Is it an image, or what?
So that's a great question, and I'm glad that Kat asked that. It is all of the above and even more. So the way, part of how you communicate, anyone communicates with animals, is as you learn it, when you think about the four clairs, clairaudience, which is clear hearing, clairsentience, which is clear feeling, claircognizance, which is clear knowing, and clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. And those are just some of the clairs, but those are the four major ones. Whichever ones are more developed in a person tends to kind of pop first, and it's almost like dominoes. After you let's say clairaudience happens first and you hear them, well, the other ones start to follow suit. So I would say when it began for me, I could really sense them, and feel them. And then I also had a real knowing, without necessarily knowing how I knew, but I knew, like, beyond a shadow of a doubt kind of thing. And then it ended up that so then I took the training and I learned to communicate with the animals, and I was able to get them to speak to me. I remember the first time one spoke to me, I literally felt like they were speaking into my left ear. And I have heard some studies done after the fact by neurologist. Somebody I knew, one of my clients, actually contacted me because she heard me say that, and she said that she did a study with this very open-minded neurologist where he had her in a machine, and they found that intuitive communication comes in through the left ear. I mean, I'm not sure if that's the only way it can happen for sure, but So it depends on, so now it kind of depends on me and that other being and how our relationship is together, or how our energy fields merge. So it can be a frequency, it can be a feeling, it can be a knowing, it can be words. The words can sound like, if it's, and animals, like let's say the animal lived in a foreign country, they can still talk to you in English, even if they live in Italy, let's say. So, and sometimes it sounds almost like your own voice in your own head, if you were just sort of talking to yourself inside your head. And sometimes it sounds very different. My sister had a cat, for example, that when I first talked to him, Whiskey, she adopted him when he was 16, if you can believe it. And he'd had about 5 or 6 homes up to that point. He was an orange cat, and they tend to move around a lot. And when I first talked to him, it was like he was this English man with a top hat and cane. That's kind of how he sounded to me and showed himself to me. And, I've had a dog, one of the dogs I mentioned in my book, Ocean. She had this meek, mild little voice, like she was, it was faint, it was meek, it was mild, and then some animals have this big thunderous voice, and it can be so different, but it can also be in like symbols, images, impressions, thought forms. Any way you can think of information coming, it could come that way. And then the other piece about it is that then there's the interpretation part of it. So, sometimes it takes a bit to learn how to interpret it. And I honestly don't believe anyone in any intuitive field is 100% all the time. If someone says that to you, I think it's really a good idea to to use caution. But because the interpretation part of it is there too, and how things are taken,
Mm-hmm. I know that as a medium, I don't always get messages from those who have passed in a straightforward way. Sometimes it'll happen in, as you say, symbols. Mm-hmm. Like if somebody wants to talk to me about the passage of time, they'll point to what I would refer to as a wristwatch. Not very many mm-hmm. people wear those anymore, but if they pointed to like their left wrist, where a watch would be, and I would get it, time, or a clock, or the passage of time or something. So for an animal, I guess they would pretty much do the same thing. And I agree with you as far as, animals having their different personalities. Animals are like people. They have their individual personalities. So some animals might be very loud and boisterous, and some of them might be arrogant, and some of them might be tiny little meek little things. So I don't find that unusual at all that that's how they communicate, or how you perceive them, because that's their personality. So right. if it happens for a person, why not an animal?
Mm-hmm. Some of them are actually quite humorous. Some of them are, jokesters. And I mean, I have one example that I think would help demonstrate how this happens for some people, so for some animals and humans communicating. I remember when I was first in practice, I have to warn you guys, my allergies are acting up a bit. I almost felt like I was going to sneeze. I'll get my finger near the mute button in case I sneeze. I've muted myself a few times to cough. Spring in Arizona is like you breathing in pollen, like it's like fog in the air right now.
Has the ice broken yet?
In Arizona?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We didn't have any ice.
That was an expression I learned when I had a girlfriend who had people who lived in Arizona.
Yeah. So I was communicating with this dog. It was a Great Dane, and the dog was having a lot of health issues. The woman contacted me because she wanted to see if there was anything her dog could share about all these health issues, because I think this female Great Dane had like 4 or 5 health issues and was on 4 or 5 different drugs for them, and she wanted to see if there was anything that could we could figure out why this was happening. And, I talked to the Great Dane, and the first thing she did was she sent me this heart, and it was coming towards me, and then it would break. And a heart kept coming towards me and break, kind of in two. And, it would be very easy to think, okay, her heart's broken. But I kind of, asked her that telepathically. And she was like, no, it's not that. So, and it was a red heart that kept coming towards me and breaking. And I said to her person, she's showing me this red heart and she keeps showing it me at breaking. And she was like, oh my gosh, like I collect hearts. And and my friend, one of my best friends who's really close with the dog, just gave me a red one for my collection. And the dog is kind of like, there's no energy coming from the dog. And I said, well, is the dog around that heart a lot? And she said, no, she's a Great Dane. And this is in my living room. And that's the only room I don't let her in because all my good stuff is in there. And she's like a bull in a china shop. So she doesn't go in there. And the dog was just like zero energy about this being what they were talking about. So, excuse me, I asked the dog some more. And the dog just literally shot me an image of her neck and her collar. And so I just said to the lady, hey, does your dog wear a collar? And she goes, yeah, she does. And she goes, oh my God. I'm like, what? And she said, she has a tag on her collar and it's a red heart and it's a rabies vaccination tag. And, I'm not a vet, so I'm not allowed to advise people whether to legally, whether to, get their dogs vaccinated or not. But I said and the dog was like, instantly, that's it. And she was basically trying to tell me that she'd had enough vaccinations by her age. She did not need any more, and that some of these causes were vaccine driven. So, then I was able to help her by saying, I suggested a holistic vet, and maybe that she be treated homeopathically to reverse any of the impacts of the vaccination. And, we got to the bottom line, but I could have easily stopped at, oh my gosh, she's got a broken heart. And some people probably would stop there if they weren't as experienced, but I knew that the energy wasn't right with that. So I just kept going and followed the breadcrumbs kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, there's another question from the chat room from Moofy. And I think this kind of went along with something that you'd already touched on, the fact that right now, because of the pandemic especially, you're having to do an awful lot of your intuitive readings virtually. And she wanted to know if you do remote viewing on pets that are missing.
So I have in the past. And, even before the pandemic came to be, I do everything over distance just because my clients are all over the world and it's time effective and cost effective for me to just do them from where I'm at. And I actually find that I usually do better. And I have worked with missing animals in the past. I don't particularly do that now or have anyone on staff who does. I do have a senior associate who also does readings in my company, and we are looking for somebody who can work on lost animals, but at this very moment we don't. And the main reason I don't anymore is just because that tends to be more of an urgent thing. Uh-huh. And I am just too busy to be able to take on urgent, usually if someone books a reading with me, it's, a week or two out, or maybe even occasionally 3 weeks out. And I don't feel that it's in their best interest for me to be doing that right now, just because of the time schedule. And, I've got a pretty full schedule with all my trainings, but I have in the past, I could share some examples of some things that have happened as a result of that if anybody wants to hear them. But at this moment, we don't have anyone on staff or myself doing it.
It seems that probably doing something like trying to locate a missing pet in that form of searching would take a lot more time. It would take a lot more concentration. And as you said, unless you have an opportunity and the time to be able to put into it, it is really kind of unfair to a client that you can't really spend a great deal of time to do it. And so I applaud you for that you say, no, I'm sorry, I wish I could, but
Yeah, we did used to have somebody on my team that did it, and they are no longer doing that right now. But I'm expecting that in time we will. And I would like to give a couple of tips for anybody who has lost an animal. A couple of the things. One of my neighbors recently lost her cat. And I'm up to my eyeballs in writing and teaching and stuff. But I just took a couple of minutes out of my schedule to just do a few simple things that people can do. One of which is I visualize a spotlight on the home where the animal, and here losing a cat in Arizona is not a good thing. We've got every predator known to man. Most people whose cats get out are no longer, they've made their transition to the spirit realm pretty quickly. So this is a little cat that, little innocent female cat that is never, out on her own really. She snuck out, and when the dog was being let out, somehow she got out. But anyhow, what I did was I visualized a spotlight on the house where she lived, and I kept telling her and sending her pictures of looking for the light, because she wouldn't necessarily know how to find her way home because she's never been out before. And so I showed her that and kept telling her to find her way home, I kept asking her to be courageous and brave and all these other things that I could do. This was a friend / neighbor, and I just did that little bit of help. And then I also shone a spotlight on the cat, and my intention with that was it was a spotlight on the cat that only benevolent beings could connect with. So like, it's not going to give a spotlight to the owls that are flying around, or the coyotes that are skulking around, or any of the rattlesnakes, all the things we have that could eat a cat or kill a cat or whatever. So I made it very specific that the spotlight would allow any benevolent humans to find the cat, and like if it was a human who was going to pick up the cat and keep the cat, they wouldn't be able to see the cat, but it would be a spotlight for those who would help the cat find its way home. Someone who would take the extra effort and get the cat home. So, so that's one thing to do. If it's a cat, it's always a good idea to put their litter box outside. And even with a dog, something that you've slept on, or slept in, like a nightshirt or t-shirt you've worn or something, for smell. Cats are even probably more into smell than dogs. It sounds funny because most people think it's the opposite. Going out and shaking treats. But sometimes when animals are lost, they get scared, and they don't even if you're calling them and they're somewhere nearby hiding, sometimes they don't always just run because they're so freaked out. So I do a lot of exercises on grounding them and giving them bubbles of protection and all that sort of thing. Then another thing that you can do is you can visualize like a cord from your heart center or your heart chakra to their heart chakra. And you can visualize that invisible cord going to wherever they are, and you can visualize kind of reeling it in and the two of you getting closer and finding your way back together. There's many creative exercises like that you can do when you've lost an animal. Another one is to be as calm and grounded as possible and try to put your energy focus on visualizing the happy reuniting of the two of you, versus what most people would do is freak out and panic. Standard human nature.
Yep.
But the more we can be balanced and centered and just talk to them in our own minds, even for people who don't necessarily think they know how to do this, just talking to them is going to help them.
Yeah.
Part of my curiosity, where in Arizona, by the way?
I am just around the Sedona area.
Oh.
Yeah.
I spent a weekend in Sedona. It's fantastic. I hiked up Cathedral Rock. It's fantastic.
Yes. Sadly, it's not what it used to be. It's getting too overrun and crazy. But that was bound to happen. The internet has opened up what Sedona is to to everybody in the world. So it's gotten a little crazy. But yes, it is very beautiful and very some of the most beautiful rock formations in the world of red rocks and
plus all of the energy vortices and such.
Yes. Yeah.
We actually stayed in the motel next to the little airstrip.
Oh yeah, up at the airport there.
And have you been there? Because they have I don't know, obviously it's probably not there now, but they had this beautiful tortoiseshell cat that loved hanging out with us and came into our room.
I don't know the cat specifically, but I've actually, years like I'm talking probably 10 years ago now, some people came into town with a silky terrier, and they had me come to their hotel room and do a reading for them for their dog. And I knew they took dogs at that hotel, and I'm very familiar with the hotel, but I didn't know their cat specifically. But that's a very Sedona thing. They also have a good restaurant at that airport.
Yeah, we got a little cafe. Yeah, we ate there. We'd have breakfast and stuff.
Yeah, it's different owners now, but it's good.
Oh, okay.
Well,
depending on, because it was the first time we ever saw cow traps, but not traps, but the bars across the grating across the road, so the cows would walk over.
We call them cattle guards. Yeah, Arizona is an open range, so in Arizona, if you hit a cow on the highway, it's your fault, not the cow's fault. So you just have to know that the whole state is an open range, and those cattle guards, the cows won't cross them, so it keeps cows off the busy roads and stuff.
Certainly puts a new spin on the don't pick up hitchhiker signs.
I have actually been driving down the Cornville Road once. It's very close. The Page Springs Road, which is very close to Sedona, just outside of Sedona. And there was like cows in the middle of the road and walking around, and you just stop and let them do where they go with it. I mean, they were not supposed to be there, but they were. So you just have to watch out for cows when you're driving.
Wow. So don't drive at night there.
Well, yeah, probably not, or at least have your lights on. Everyone here drives at night, but it's...
So, would an animal, whether it's a cat, dog, whatever kind of animal it is, when they get old and you don't know whether it's time for them to go or just try and make them as comfortable or whatever, as an animal, do they tell you to tell the people, to help them along, kind of?
Absolutely. For some reason, without me even planning it or having any intention of this happening, as I did consultations for people over the years, my specialty kind of became the death and dying process and connecting with animals in the afterlife. And like I said, it happened just naturally. And I do love helping people with that, because that is a very trying time for people. So, I did a lot of communication with animals that were, and some of them aren't even old, but some of them are, close to crossing over due to illness or whatever the case may be. So I would talk to them and find out what their wishes were, how they were feeling, what they thought about it, and then share that with their people, and and then help their people through the process of this. And then I do a lot of communication with animals that have already crossed over as well, more either recently or even in the more distant past. But I did a ton of that work, and I do love that, because it really brings about so much peace for the humans to be able to know that they, I believe that we don't die and that our animals don't die, that the soul, the essence of our souls lives on forever. It's the physical body that ends, and animals don't take death the same way we do. To them, it's as natural as birth, and in our culture, it's like an awful thing, and they kind of think about it a bit differently, because I'm a believer in reincarnation. They just kind of pop back in a new body, when the time is right. And I help people even with that process. So absolutely, 100%.
So would an animal like that, if it was like one of ours, how would we know that it's trying to tell us that?
So, the more in tune you can get with an animal, the more you can know it. And many people just know it. I mean, they say the eyes are the window to the soul. And, so sometimes you can just see it, and not necessarily even just in their eyes, but in their whole energy field, or feel it. And I give a whole, in my new book, I give a whole series of exercises. There's 19 of them that go step by step. At the end of each chapter, all the chapters are stories, but at the end of each chapter, I go step by step through the exercises. But basically, kind of to sum it up, you want to be really grounded, centered, balanced, well hydrated kind of thing. You want to start to, you have to get into almost a meditative state. You want to open up the connection with them. You want to link your energy field up with the energy field of your animal companion. Deal with all of your, trust issues and all of that, and really ask for assistance. I teach all of my students about their own personal healing teams, and I believe that we all have groups of beings on the non-physical realm who are there to help us, and they could be, they could be ancestors. They could from way back. They could be, relatives that have recently crossed, other animal companions. They could be, archangels, reincarnations of, Edgar Casey's on my healing team. Different ascended masters, or I think I said angels, archangels, that kind of thing. And really just opening ourselves up to a place where we're able to receive that information. And many people are able to know just because they know their animals so well, even if they haven't taken any formal training or, pursued any study in this. But, with something as important as making a life or death decision, I think it's really important to take the time to learn learn all the steps and practice them. And for anybody who's really interested to learn how to do it and practice doing it, and not try to make a decision that deep with it, or maybe get help from somebody who can help them with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think for me, having had so many animals my entire life, probably one of the saddest and the most difficult decision that we have to make is having to make that decision for them. And
yes.
We would like very much to try and keep them with us as long as we can, but that's, as it was pointed out to me by someone very close to me, it's very selfish for us to want to keep them around knowing that they've got to be suffering. But at the same time, we don't want to hurt ourselves by knowing that we have to make that decision. We kind of hope, oh, well, maybe perhaps they're so sick, I'll go to bed tonight and they will pass sometime in the night on their own. Now, that's selfish too. And we would like to have them close to us, and they would like to have us close to them. It's like when we do make that decision, we try to be with them. I know I do.
Uh-huh.
That hasn't happened a couple of times in my life where I was not able to be with my pet when they passed. But for the most part, I've been with most all of them. I've been right there letting them know it's okay. And, it's very, very difficult to do. And for anyone that has never had to go through it, it's extremely hard. But they do have a tendency to let you know. My last two cats that passed away a couple of months ago, within 2 days of each other. A 2-year-old, actually he wasn't even 2 years old, and my 15-year-old. And they both let me know there's not much more you can do. And I had to let them go. And it was very, very difficult to do. But as you say, they can look at you and you can see it in their face. You can see it in the way they behave. And they're letting you know, look, can you help me out here? It's a horrible thing, but sometimes it's got to be done. You can't help it.
Yeah. And, some animals are able to cross on their own. It's the thing that I always think about, and I say to my clients is, in the wild, nature takes care of this, because if one being is so weak that they can no longer walk or move around or eat or, get to water, another being, a predator, is going to come along and take them out. It's an awful thing to think about, but it's like in nature, it's taken care of differently. And like for humans, we have hospice, and we have all of those, they don't euthanize people in most places, but they have ways to keep people comfortable in their end of days, which isn't as available for animals. Although I do know of some people who are trying to, work towards doing something like that for animals. But the thing is, I think as us being guardians who are bringing our animal companions into a life in an unnatural environment for the most part, I think that it is one of our duties at times and one of the kindest things we can do for them. And I will share that I've connected with so many animals who have been helped across the Rainbow Bridge. And I would say, I can honestly tell you, I've never had one that said, why did you do that to me? I didn't want you to do that. They're all they're in so much gratitude, and it's like when they cross over to the spirit realm, it's like they're in puppy and kitten bodies, and free and soaring, and it's like a beautiful thing for them. It's not a bad thing at all. And they're still connected to us. They're in the spirit realm. They can still be around us. And, cats and dogs don't get stuck in the astral plane and have problems. They can come and go and be in all places at one time. And it's quite amazing.
Yeah, I've definitely had cats that have passed that have, I could feel them actually rubbing up against my legs.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard them meow because, every cat, just like a human being, has got their own individual voice. I've heard them meow. And there was a couple of dogs that I had that, for whatever reason, even though he didn't have bad teeth, he always had bad breath. And I continued to smell that smell of his breath and everything. And I knew he was around. So yeah, that they have their way of letting us know that they're still here, and I think that's probably the most comforting thing. Now, those people that believe that our spirit doesn't die, that it just transitions, for those that do believe, it is extremely comforting to know that while they might not be here, we can't feel their fur. We can't be, we're not able to pet them and cuddle them and tickle their ears and their paws. They're still with us in some ways. And
yes.
That kind of brings me up to my next question, is that animals can be so attuned to the way we're feeling that they seem to know when something's wrong. And I never really understood that for the longest time. I'd like to get your take on that. How do you think, especially like cats and dogs, which are our two main pets, how do you think that they are able to pick up on us, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually?
So that's a great question, and it's one that I'm glad you asked. And, our animal companions, or companion animals, or whatever you want to call them, even horses, and this would even include, people have lizards and parrots and, llamas and goats and everything as pets too these days, chickens. Our companion animals, they have one extra chakra that humans don't have, and it's a major chakra for them, and it's called the sensing chakra. And it's located on the bridge of the nose between the nose tip and the eyes. And that sensing chakra, excuse me, is responsible for the sensory intake of information and the input of that information to the brain. So it's kind of like how they take in everything, and it's like a whole energy center that humans don't even have. And I believe it is this sensing chakra that allows them to have even heightened sense with us. And then they've got their third eyes, their brow chakra or third eye chakra, and they are always able to communicate with us and know what's going on with us. So they're like sponges for us. So they're absorbing things, clearing energies for us. They're very in tune to our energy. So there's no way, like if you were sad, grieving, devastated, whatever, angry, whatever it is, you cannot hide that from an animal, whether you think you can. I mean, I've had clients tell me, they had a session with me and they were like, well, our animals, I forget what they had, it's been so long, but they were like, they're really, not behaving normally, and there's this and there's that, and I'm talking to them, and then finally they go, well, we're getting a divorce, but we haven't told them yet. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but they know. They live in your house, right? It's not like it's, they're they know all this stuff. They know everything. And they know when we're not well, even before we do. I think in the book I talk about a Doberman that can, I don't know if I used the Doberman in the book, but it was a story about a Doberman. I think I did use the Doberman. I changed a couple of names and things for privacy's sake, but that could determine if his person's moles were cancerous or not. This was a girl that grew a lot of moles, and 99.9% of them were fine, but the odd one was cancerous and had to be removed. And the dog could tell her which ones were. And there's lots of proof about dogs being able to tell if someone has cancer or not, and all kinds of things like that. And, I think that'll become more, the norm in society as the years go by. But they just know they have that ability to sense everything that's happening on a physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual level within us. And it's that chakra that helps them along with, some other things.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
There's a one panel cartoon I posted on Instagram, where someone is checking in to St. Peter, and this dog is just hopping up and down, and St. Peter says, "Oh, you're Bobby. Well, for the past 50 years, this guy's been really chatting you up."
Yeah, I've seen that one. That's really great. And I mean, I truly believe that, I truly believe when we cross over, we're reunited, but I believe even while we're on this plane, we're reunited, but we have to learn how to bridge that gap to be able to connect with them. And I will say that for people who can do that or allow themselves to open to that peace, they're willing to open themselves to that, and they learn. Losing an animal becomes a little bit easier. I'm not saying it's easy. It's it's always heart-wrenching and awful, but to know that there's a way to be a bit more connected to them when you lose them, I think it's a huge gift to be able to have that connection and maintain it.
Well, all of us, Lynn, all four of us have cats. And it's just something that I think is just one more thing that causes the four of us to have a little bit more of a closeness, because we can relate to our animals. Sometimes I don't even like to refer to my cats as pets. Mm-hmm. I refer to them as my companions, and they're my housemates and that sort of thing. And I post pictures of my cats all the time, and Henry posts pictures of his, and I'll tell you, Henry's two cats, they're all over him. I mean, those are Henry's babies, and I think you'll agree with that, Henry. Your two cats are not just pets; they're part of your family.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't use the word pets much at all, because it's sort of politically incorrect in certain parts of the country now for the last decade or so. And you'll notice I probably might have written it in my book once. You might read the word pets once, only because there was just no other word that made sense in that place. But for the most part, I call them animal companions. So many people call them their fur kids or their fur babies, and we think of them like. To most people, animals, especially anybody who loves animals, they're not commodities or just, something that's external from us. They're a part of us. They are family.
Except mine is the grouchy roommate.
Some of them can be that way.
I mean, grouchy roommate.
Yeah. Is that why you have to feed it cheeseburger?
I have 4, and they're all so extremely different.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. But Puka is one of the main ones, and he's kind of weird. He sounds like he's complaining a lot and kind of scoldy sometimes, but I always know what he means. I know when he's like, this is what I want. I'm like, well, you can't have that. But if he's outside, I know when his scolding means, I want to go inside, bring me inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're very demonstrative and vocal and all different, depending on the animal. They all have their ways of letting us know what they need and want. And, we're going to this deeper place that I teach people to do it's just a way to be even closer with them, to even understand them better, be able to help them more. But yeah, they're they're all, and whoever thinks, I had someone on Facebook the other day go, "You are crazy, animals don't have souls." And I'm like, I just said I feel sorry for you. You know what I mean? And all kinds of other people were saying the same things. If you had lived the life that I've lived, or probably any of you have lived, there's no way to believe that those beings that we share our lives with don't have a soul. It's just, to me, it's not even something that I would consider. There's no doubt in my mind remotely.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell just by looking at their eyes sometimes, especially if one of my cats doesn't feel well, like the one that wasn't even 2 years old that passed away a couple of months ago, I could see it in his eyes, and it was just so sad. And there wasn't the vet tried to do everything they possibly could for him. Unfortunately, there were a few things that they didn't do that really irked me, but when it came down to it, he held on as long as he could. He fought as much as he could. And yet when he looked at me, I could tell that he was saying, I'm very tired of being poked and prodded and having tests run and pills shoved down my throat and being force-fed and everything. I'm tired of this. And I could just tell just by the look in his face. It hurt me, but, I was trying to do the best I could for him. But I could tell by the look on his face. And even though they didn't necessarily have the same human features, there was still something about his eyes and just the way he behaved, the way he may have cocked his head or something. It was like, just, I'm tired. Mm-hmm. I'm just plain tired. And how could you say that something that can communicate with you in such a profound way doesn't have a soul, that isn't aware of itself? How could you say that?
And a being that has so much difference. I think it was maybe, I don't know, I think it was Jeff who was talking. I don't know if it was Jeff. I think it was Jeff talking about his cats and how they're all so unique and different, so incredibly different. Like, they're like just like we are. I always say we're all snowflakes. We're all so different. We come in different We come into this lifetime different. We have different experiences. We have different, on all levels, and we are like snowflakes. And our animals are too. You could get 3 dogs or 3 cats from the same litter, and they're not going to be remotely the same necessarily. They're not, and they're their own beings.
So
Now, do you notice a difference between the consciousness and the communication levels of, say, what we would consider wild animals like tigers, even snakes for that matter, or mountain lions, etc.? Down where you are, I'm sure there's mountain lions.
Oh yeah, I had a bobcat yesterday right in my yard.
Do they have a different tone and communication level as opposed to, say, domesticated?
I feel like they communicate different information. Our animal companions are kind of like kids to us, but I feel like wild animals in the wild, like all animals in the wild, they have the ability to communicate to us as individuals. I mean, what they would be talking about would be slightly different. But we can also communicate like with whale as a whole, as the species as a whole as well. I mean, there's and we could do the same for cat or dog or whatever, as opposed to the individual. But I feel like the consciousness is also is the same in all beings. I don't believe that humans are superior or anything like that. I think sometimes you get more profound information from animals than you might from some humans, not in all cases. But I truly believe that all beings are able to communicate on pretty interesting levels when we get down to it.
Well, I often wondered whether or not, say, like California cats would be different than, say, Park Avenue, New York City cats, because they grow up differently. They have a different environment. They have a different lifestyle. Their humans do, and whether or not that would also slant how they communicate.
Yeah, I mean, it can. And one thing to remember is most beings that we're communicating with have had many lifetimes before this one. So they could have had lifetimes in other countries, etc. But, if they're talking about current life stuff, I'm sure that a cat that lives on the 25th floor of a high-rise in Manhattan, would have different things to say than a cat that lives out on a ranch in Wyoming that's out, catching mice and chasing butterflies and whatever. You know what I mean? There is that difference. But then remember that they've had many lifetimes, and they have the animals on a soul level. I mean, the communication that I like to do with the animals a lot of times is like communication that's a little bit deeper, communication that can help us raise our consciousness and grow and evolve and, that kind of thing. But yes, I mean, there's different perspectives for sure. Just like if you spoke to a person who lived in that condo in Manhattan, or a person who lived out on a ranch, there's going to be different perspectives on things,
Yeah.
Some of them, some people have to sit on a freeway for 2 hours to get to work in bumper to bumper traffic, and other people have to walk to the barn or, whatever, go to their computer in their other room.
You see, I often wondered about mine because she's grouchy, but she grew up in a barn full of horses. And I got her as a retirement cat. So she came into a nice retirement, and she's just grouchy because I don't know whether it's because, like, what the heck? You kids get off of my lawn? You have to take the transitions because some of us do have rescue cats.
Yes, absolutely.
And don't know what their prior history is, so it makes it kind of interesting.
Yeah, and cats really have their preferences and probably make them more clear than any other species.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They're unique.
Yeah.
It's interesting because more cats are drawn to meditation or things of esoteric things, studies, and the unseen realm. And I've seen more cats come in and take over the body of another cat. Like, let's say you lose a cat, to like one of your cats crosses over, and then like the next week or two, you might see one of your cats acting just like that other cat, which is totally out of character for the cat. And that cat has actually come with a soul agreement and entered that cat's body for a few minutes to revisit you and to make you know that they revisited you. And this happens so often. I can't tell you how many people have already told me this, but I mean, and how many cats tell me this when I communicate. Oh yeah, I came in and I took over, so-and-so, and they'll go, oh my God, that was her, or that was him. Or, I knew that was him because that cat never did this, but he did it. And it was like, and it might just be a visit. I call it a visitation. They come back, and come into another body. But cats, they'll leave footprints on a duvet, on a down duvet or something like that. All kinds of things, when people only have one cat and then their cat crosses over and then they've got those divots in their duvet, the paw prints or whatever, all kinds of funny things. But cats are, every species is unique and interesting in their own way, but cats are, especially that way.
Mine is sometimes possessed, but I'm not quite sure what.
I tell you, our time is already run by, so what we're going to do is take us a quick break, 6-7 minutes, something like that. And if people listening in has questions, you can send them to us, and then we'll get to them when we come back on the other side. So with that, let's see, who's taking us out? Is it?
Well, let's see. Well, that's 10 years or so.
It's been Jeff for yeah.
Okay, Jeff.
You're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with your hosts Henry Foister, Ceiling Cat Barbara Duncan, Tabby Cat Gash, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, and tonight's guest, animal communicator Lynn McKenzie. So stay tuned for more of the Paranormal View after the break.
Whether you're listening at home, at work, or anywhere, thanks for making Para-X part of your day. Your source for everything paranormal. Para-X.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. Those listening in the chat room and those listening from around the world, we appreciate each and every one of you. Tonight we've got a great show, and we have with us Barbara Duncan.
Hello, everyone.
And speaking of listeners from around the world, where do we have listeners at tonight?
All over the United States, Canada, and across the pond in England and Belgium.
All right. And we have with us Tabby Cat Gash. Maybe.
Mute button.
Yeah, she must have done that. And we have
sorry about that. I'm here.
We have Jeffrey Gould.
Welcome to the show. Hello.
And we have our great guest, Lynn McKenzie.
Hi there.
All right. So we got a lot of other things actually to talk about too. And I believe, Barbara, did you say you had a question to start with?
I didn't say that, but I'm really interested in her psychic development class because it sounds fascinating to look at it from a standpoint. You call it an energetic recalibration.
Yes. Yeah, I have a training. Did you have a specific question, or you just wanted me to share a bit about it with you?
Well, I'm interested in what you're calling an energetic calibration, whether it's very similar to like chakral work or in, say, Reiki, where you're just trying to reestablish a center.
So my psychic development training is completely energetic in nature. It's not instructional. Like my clairvoyance mastery training, for example, is instructional, where there's lessons and you do A, B, C, and D, and you learn how to do it all, and you go through all these procedures. And the same with my animal energy certification training program. It's all instructional. But I came up with this psychic development program, and really it's energetic recalibration. So although there is a little bit of instruction, most of the entire program is geared to changing your energy via attunements. So I made these I'll call them channeled audios, and that, I was basically given the information that people would need. And it's like I think I can't even remember now because I made it a number of years ago, but students love it. And what it does is it allows you to change your frequency, and you listen to for 6 months. You listen to one of the I call them attunements, calibrations, activations. Really is the main word, but you listen to one for 21 days of month 1, and then on month 2 you go and you get the activation for month 2, and you listen to it for 21 days. And there's other things involved in the training and different exercises people do, but it's more about recalibrating your energy, changing your energy through this activation that you go through for 21 days.
So it's tonal in nature?
Yeah, yes, but it's actually spoken words. It's me, going through and speaking the words for each month, and they're all different. They're all very, very different, these activations.
I often wonder whether or not someone would include music as an activator in this. Well, obviously not Metallica, but I use Peter Gabriel's instrumental music, and that really does help open communications, for example. And I'm wondering how you would consider music as a spiritual advancement.
Absolutely. I believe that anything that impacts our senses, drumming, didgeridoo, flute music, whatever it is, I believe, that a lot of people use the tuning forks and all of that. And I absolutely believe this. And this is just another form of that, these activations. And there's breathing exercises with them, and I have people like breathe in psychic mastery, and all kinds of there's all sorts of different things. And of course we work with the chakras from the Earth Star to the Soul Star chakra system during these activations, and the words are designed to allow students to come into what I call their divinely the gifts that they were divinely given before coming here. I believe each of us comes in with many, many gifts that we can choose to activate and open. And the first piece is awareness, and then the second part of that is, embodying them. So becoming aware of them and then embodying them. And this allows people to embody and embrace their psychic gifts and their, divine blueprint, so to speak.
So in a way, it's sort of chanting or along those same lines of a mantra of some sort.
Yeah, it's along the lines of that, and it's 6 months of that, and then some other bonuses and pieces that I added in to kind of round out the. There is a little bit of instruction, but mostly it's about working through those activations more than anything.
Now, can you use those activations not only to communicate with yourself and understand yourself, but to human beings, but also you teach that on how to learn how to connect with animals as well?
Yeah, what happens is many people come into my trainings, like maybe the animal energy certification training, which is what my main sort of, my main training, or the clairvoyance mastery, and then they do this. Because when I teach animal communication, I don't just teach telepathy. I believe that, and the reason I call myself an animal intuitive versus an animal communicator is because I think of I do animal communication, so I do the telepathic part with the animals, like, that most people do and know and aim for in animal communication. But I also use my psychic intuitive gifts, and I also receive information from my guides, the animals' guides, the archangels. I'll, as long as it's coming from a benevolent source, I'll take information from wherever it, that can help from wherever it comes. I've had, as I mentioned in the book, that dog Ocean, that she was the one with the meek, mild voice that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. She actually told me the first words out of her mouth were, "It's my duodenum," and I know some people say duodenum, but she said that word, and that's how I could relate to it, because that's how that's how I had heard it said in Canada. And I don't know anatomy and physiology. I'm not a veterinarian, but that dog told me, and she was only 2, and she was dying pretty much. And she told me it was her duodenum. And not all animals are that specific, but she was. And she was very clear. And it was confirmed by an endoscopy a number of weeks later. And they were able to, get her on the right path. And she lived a nice life after that. So, she told me herself. But if it had come from her guides or an archangel or, an ascended master or wherever it could come from in my healing team or her healing team, I would take it, as long as it can help. That's my number one goal, is to just get the help for the animal or get the peace of mind for the people who need the answers or whatever,
So we do have a question from the chat room, and they're asking about animals and their ability to see spirits. Do you think that animals have the ability to see ghosts, angels, other types of beings?
100%. Many times when I used to do a lot more consultations, I still do a very limited few, but over the years, while I was doing consultations more regularly, and even now sometimes, when I'm connecting in with an animal companion, for somebody, all of a sudden it'll be like there's an elderly gentleman there with them, and they'll let me know. And I'll say there's an elderly gentleman around who's coming forth, and your cat or your dog or your horse or whatever wants me to let you know about this being. And they'll go, "Oh my God, it's my dad," or it's my grandfather, or it's my brother, or it's my husband, or whatever, and so 100%. And oftentimes that is that person's way of coming through. Like that either the animal is helping them to connect with that being that they're already connected with, or that person, the grandfather, the father, let me take a quick sip, my throat's getting really dry, will end up that they'll sense the opening of the portal, and they'll go, "Okay, I'm going for it." I'm coming in. So it's very and animals sense other animals coming in. When one of our animal companions crosses over and comes back to visit, sometimes the way we know is because our cats are telling us so.
Now, that comes to mind. We do have another question from the chat room. Patsy wanted to know if it is beneficial for other cats to be present when another one passes, like at the vet. So if there are other animals around when that cat passes, is it beneficial for them?
I think it is beneficial for them if it's at all possible. I also think it's nicer if your animal can pass at home if you're helping them across. I know that's not always possible. And when it was time for my Maltese Carly left this plane on the solstice in 2019, December 20th, 2019. So the fall, the winter solstice, and I would have liked to have my Yorkie there with her. It wasn't possible just due to the vet's timing, the fact that it had come to a head that she needed help, she needed assistance in crossing sooner than later, and my Yorkie was at the groomer, And the only time the vet had was that time when my Yorkie was at the groomer, my current dog, Pixie Rose. So Pixie wasn't able to be there. And it was hard on her, but it would have been hard on her even if she was there. And I would have preferred that she was there to see it with her own eyes on the physical plane. Of course, I communicated it with her very much. If it comes to like taking cats to the vet, I know you have a lot of cats, Kat, and I know you probably couldn't take them all with you to the vet if one of yours was going to cross. And some cats hate the vet, so it might just make it more tense for the cat that's making its transition. So you have to kind of weigh it all out, and maybe could you have it done at home? Could you just bring the two cats that are closest to the one cat that's crossing over, or are you just going to communicate it to them and let them understand?
Yeah. Now you have various different ways and means of. As you would put it in your book, the lessons and how to go about performing the relaxations and so forth in order to be more attuned. And a lot of people don't really look at what they do by way of, say, yoga and any kind of relaxation type of things. They're looking at that as just from a physical standpoint. They're looking at it from a health type of thing. But the things that you talk about in your book about preparing yourself to be more attuned and so forth, these are very, very distinct, and there's something that people do anyway, and I find it incredible. I mean, like you say, to prepare a space free from noise and distraction, and to relax, straighten your back, relax, either sitting or lying down, and taking a number of breaths and so forth. And I think this is probably one of the most interesting, to visualize a white light coming down from above toward the top of your head where the location of your crown chakra is, and then visualizing it entering there and then going through your body and filling every cell with white light. I think that is absolutely fantastic. And I have tried it a couple of times, and for me, one of the things that I do as a medium is that if I want to protect myself from any outside influence, especially, a spirit that I don't want to get near me, the first thing I do is surround myself in like a bubble of light. And that really helps me to focus. It gives me a peace of mind. And it helps me through the rest of whatever I'm doing, whether it's an investigation or a reading for someone. And I think this would really help a lot of people, for just about everything.
Yeah, 100%. We have the ability to do this. I believe we all have the ability to be way more in tune with energies, all energies on the, invisible realm, ability to communicate with animals, to communicate with those in the spirit realm, whatever you want to call it. And what we're missing is the procedure. A lot of people, like humans, get really busy. We've got busy schedules. We've got phones beeping. We've, texts coming in. We've got phone calls. We've got people, wanting to talk to us. And there's just a lot of pulls on our attention and our energy and all of that. And people have, radios and TVs going on in the background. And it's just it's like having noise that's blocking us from this higher consciousness that we want to achieve. We want to connect into and tap into and and just that what our goals are for connecting in with the spirit realm of any level. So when we have like a procedure that can help us to relax, to quiet our minds, to put everything aside, and to just come into what it is that we want to do, be clear and open about it, and we have success that way. And like things like doing yoga or drumming or connecting, like even connecting with nature. Hiking could be your spiritual practice, but having some kind of spiritual practice where we bring some of this into the forefront allows us to do things that we weren't even aware of before. And it's a matter of training yourself. I call this work the path of mastery of the soul, because we all have the ability. It's just a matter of, are we going to take advantage of it and apply ourselves.
Right.
And so my book, Bark Name Meow, is very instructional as well as telling stories. Like, it's really about the stories and about the examples and about the experiences of people with their animal companions, and all of the variety of ways that animals come to us, like as partners, as teachers, as guides, as healers, as catalysts, as bridges for us. They come with all these different abilities to help us. But I gave real instruction. Like I actually, at the end of each chapter, I do some writing about the lesson of that chapter and what we can all learn from it and take away from it. And then I give a reflection exercise where people can actually try to apply that lesson to one of their own animal companions. But then I give a really in-depth training on an instructional training on how people can get from point A to point B. And
Right.
those exercises are kind of cumulative. And what I recommend for people is, once they've read the book, the exercises have their own table of contents, and then go back through the exercises and keep them as a guide to revisit, and master. Because again, it's like, you don't learn how to play Mozart in your first week of playing the piano, but if you keep applying yourself, you will eventually,
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed that if I take a few moments to myself, which is kind of few and far in between, but when I do take a few moments to myself, I can kind of let a lot of things go.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that when I relax, my cats have a tendency to just come and get near me. And I've got a couple of cats that generally don't really like me to fool with them too much. They're the kind that, well, I want your attention when I want attention, not when you want to give me attention. But if I take a few moments to just relax and breathe and calm down, those cats have a tendency to come around me more often. And I guess it's because they pick up on the fact that my energy is different, it's calmer, and they like that.
Yep. Cats really gravitate to this work. I mean, for those people who are healers who have cats, the cats will like to come in and be a part of the healing in the healing room. They will like to be around you when you're meditating or when you're practicing this work. That's why they're, constantly at the computer screens of my students, trying to, get involved. That's like a big message, to anybody whose cat does that they're looking for more of that from you.
Yeah.
And they say cats don't suffer fools easily. If a cat wants you to be a certain way, they're going to, kind of let you know that when you're doing it the way they think is right,
Oh, yeah.
they're going to be around. Do it my way, lady.
Oh, definitely.
They are like that, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. they want, it's almost like some of them will only give you the time of day when you're behaving the way they want you to behave.
Yeah.
And you better know it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah, they do gravitate towards mellow. We had a temple cat, and when you meditate, right in the lap, almost all the time.
Yeah, they love that. Cats love that. And other animals do too. They just show it slightly differently. Obviously horses can't jump in your lap, hopefully. If they do, you might be in trouble.
Well, a mini horse.
Unless they're minis, yeah. Unless they're minis. But, they, and horses are very sensitive and very spiritually oriented beings. Believe me, I believe they're the ones who taught me how to be psychic. Just in the way they communicate. But every species is so very different. And in the way, they all bring the same lesson and message forth, but in their own unique, special way.
They certainly do. I could not even imagine my life without animals. I've had an animal my entire life. And, cats and dogs. And my husband had ferrets for a period of time. And each and every one of them have had their own unique personalities, their own quirks, and some of them have been real pain in the butts and so forth, and some of them have been the most loving animals in the world. And I couldn't have loved all of them any less for their personalities and so forth. And for those that I've lost over the years, I look back on them with fondness and love every moment that they shared with me. And for the times in my life that I really needed companionship and, just a quiet understanding, those animals have really been there for me. And anyone that allows themselves to feel that they have a connection to their, pets, will definitely realize that there is a connection there. We do need that. We don't always just need a human companion. Sometimes we need like a soft paw or a waggy tail or, a lick on the cheek or in the ear or something from a big floppy dog. That sort of thing. I think it's part of our human nature that we really do need to have an animal in our lives. And like we recently had another guest on the show that their particular companion is a snake. Now, me personally, I could never get close to a snake. But this person has had this snake in their lives for 17 years.
Wow.
And has such a close connection with that particular soul that it's like another human being. And so until or unless you actually connect with another species of animal, you don't really know. And there are people that don't even want to try. And it's sad. It's very sad.
Yeah, and a snake can communicate, as well as a cat can. It's more about, are we willing to communicate with that snake, or are we, can we, communicating with another being is all about, is all about the belief that all beings have divine wisdom to share, and then also understanding that we are all equals. We are all and surrendering to that, and to, if you're terrified of snakes, which some people are, they're one of the species that people are terrified of. Imagine how that snake feels. You know what I mean? Imagine the energy coming at you if practically every being was terrified of you that you encountered.
Yeah.
So and it's all about, surrendering, non-judgment. It's funny because, it's not about judging another being. It's about understanding the oneness and learning from them and hearing what they have to share and interpreting that and bringing it back as a really powerful lesson, or for yourself and for humanity as a whole, or for the the person whose animal companions you were talking to. But I've spoken to. I remember once I was in Toronto and I was doing a live. I was doing a live communication for a client I had in Toronto, and I was going to her place that afternoon, and I was having lunch with a friend of mine, and I was told him I was going to speak with an iguana. It was like a 7 or 9 year old iguana. I can't remember. I think it was 7. And we were at lunch, and my friend had been into reptiles a bit with his son when his son was younger. And, all of a sudden he looks at me and goes, this iguana is going to be about 5 feet long, right? Like, no, I did not. Like, I hadn't even thought about it, right? I wasn't thinking about it. And he goes, yeah, it's going to be about 5 feet long. And one of the reasons she was having me to come to communicate with this iguana is it kept losing bits of its tail, and different bits of its body were kind of falling off. And I mean, lizards do some of that when, I think there's an ability where if another animal grabs the lizard by the tail, they just let go of their tail and keep going. And the animal has their tail and the lizard's alive. I don't know much about lizards. So if I'm saying the wrong thing, don't beat us up. But, and I was like, oh my gosh, but it was, and she had tortoises and all kinds of cool animals in her house. And it was great communicating with that iguana. But, I'm glad he warned me, because I might have thought it was a little thing that would fit in your hand, I didn't really know iguanas very well. I've communicated with like llamas, iguanas, goats, chickens, all kinds of beings, not including the wild beings, but all kinds of them. And they're all equally able. It's more about, can we bring our minds to their, and to their place. Like, I've had people tell me, like, they're judging cats because cats are obligate carnivores, and I'm like, this is getting way too ridiculous. Like, all animals were made on, like, there's this whole circle of life. And in this world, if we look at the world, most animals are the food for something else. It's very evident in the desert. They in the spring, there's 1 million bunnies and quails, and by the fall, there's not so many, Yeah. But every being has to live, like, I mean, it's awful to us when we, I remember ravens had some babies near the house I lived in before this one. And one night the owl raided their nest, and, it was awful. There was a scream, that blood-curdling scream from the, tree, and it was awful. But, the owls have to eat, and their babies have to be able to live too. So it's an interesting concept, and I don't want to go too deep into that. But I mean, we have to just sort of surrender to the way that is. That's not going to change. How where owls going to get their food, or eagles, or every living being on this earth. But it's about understanding the oneness and being open to that, and practicing non-judgment of other species and all of that.
So essentially, you had a parliament going after a murder.
Oh, no.
So since this is a paranormal show and we do the full spectrum of paranormal here, I have to ask you this question then. Do you feel that your attunement and your ability to be receptive to other creatures, given the recent UFO sightings and documentation, do you think you would have better luck in contacting alien life because you could communicate with other souls other than human?
I would say 100%, my answer would be 100% yes for everybody who has opened their consciousness a little bit more. It isn't something that I have specifically focused on. So, I would have to bring my focus. Like, I always believe that the more awareness we have about anything, the more ability we have to move our consciousness in that direction, and have more ability to communicate with animals, or to communicate with those on the other side, or to communicate with aliens, or whatever it is. I really believe that is, that is possible. And it's about once we learn one psychic or intuitive sort of modality or how to connect or communicate with one being, I believe it's much easier to learn to communicate with the others. And I believe it's also important to bring that into our awareness and understand what's already happening and what's already possible, so that we can sort of strive in that direction if that's our desire.
Yeah.
So you're eliminating the shock and the veil, so to speak, of saying it's not possible to, yes, it is possible, and you're not shocked when it does happen.
Yeah, it's like if we don't know something exists or is possible, or that we could possibly potentially learn to do it, we'll never do it, But once we become aware of it, like I had to first become aware that animal communication was a field, where even though I always was an animal person and felt that I learned at a younger age, how to communicate with animals in my own way, and how to, develop my psychic intuitive gifts, which I feel that I learned from being around so many horses every day of my life for so long. Even though I lived in the city, I made it a point to be around horses pretty much every day that I could, and ride horses. There was a long period of time in my life that I was riding 2 horses a day for, ages. And so even though I had all that, then once I became aware of the field and learned about the field and read like crazy about it, read every book I could find on it, and then did the training and really became aware of how it was all done, then it became easy to do for me. But had no one ever, introduced that to me, I don't know that I would have, had the same experience, just because I think it's really about, that's why I'm sure I haven't listened to your show up to this point, because I'm new to this show, not new to the concept. And I'm sure that everybody just benefits so much from listening to who you have on this show, because it opens their minds and their consciousness to other things that they can then learn and, and embody.
Yeah,
sometimes it just takes a door to be opened just a crack for things to happen.
And a slight shift in the way you think and believe in your consciousness. It's not like a mile away. It's just, you could be on 99.8 and they're on 99.9. You just have to move the dial a little bit. That's how I teach my students with a radio dial. I have all kinds of, things that I have them visualize, and it's so true. Like the other side is just one channel away from the station you're already on.
Yep.
So you do form a collective unconsciousness in a way, as Jung would say, with those people that you're teaching, for example, and within your student group.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now we're down to about 17 minutes, a little less probably. But you talk about the chakra. Now, those that know me know I don't feel, don't see, nothing happens like that to me. But what is the chakra?
Right. That's a great question. And one of the things I want to preface this by is, because of what you said, is that whether you see them or feel them or, sense them or not, you can still work with them and benefit by them. And like some people will just have to trust they're there. You know what I mean? So a chakra is a Sanskrit word, meaning wheel, and it's like chakras are often known as wheels of life or wheels of light, and what they are is they're like spinning vortexes, and we have chakras, and our animal friends have chakras all over their bodies, and but what we usually refer to when we're talking generally about chakras in humans is the 7 major chakras, and those run along the spine. And anyone who's ever lived in this world has probably seen a diagram of them somewhere. In yoga, they were found, like they were discovered, or I don't know if you want to call it. They were first known of like way, way, way long ago, like thousands and thousands of years ago. And so the chakras are basically this spinning vortex, and they kind of meet in the middle at the chakra point, and there's a vortex that comes out the front and out the back. And chakras are they help us to open up to our higher consciousness when we work with our chakras. And like I said, you don't have to feel, see, sense, or know about, you have to know they're there, but you don't have to feel, see, or sense them. And they are like, what they do is they filter in like really vital life force energy. So that's how energy comes in into our beings from universal life force energies from any parts of the universe. And then it makes our way through into our chakras, and it goes through any filters that our chakras may have. So if you have an imbalance in one of your chakras, that life force energy coming in may have a little bit of a little bit of dirt and dust and clouds to get through. And then that energy comes in and it travels through your meridians and goes into your endocrine system and actually feeds your physical body. I'm not sure that, they study this in medicine or anything like that, but it truly is an important part. There's all of this essence of who we are and our energy fields and all of that are very, very important. And I believe as time goes on, we will, that science and there'll be ways to even prove this even more. But I have heard of experiments actually where a certain meridian to a certain bodily organ, all our meridians, which are, I like to think of our chakras just in a really general way as etheric organs. And then I like to think of our meridians as etheric veins, and that's not really, that's just a real simplistic way of looking at it. That's not really how they are. But I've heard of, studies done even many, many years ago in the 90s where they actually cut off, like block the energy of a meridian, and a person had real physical ailments in that organ that related to that meridian. So our chakras each have different sort of roles. We have a crown chakra on the top of our head that kind of opens us up to consciousness and to all that is, all this higher stuff that we look at. We've got our third eye, which is on our brow area, and that's more of our center of psychic, anything psychic and intuitive and allowing us to be, clairvoyant, that kind of thing. Then we've got our throat chakra at the area of our throat. We've got our heart chakra, our solar plexus, our sacral chakra in our lower belly, and our root chakra at the base of our tailbones. And animals have chakras. Again, the only major one they have that we don't have is the sensing chakra, which is that chakra I mentioned earlier that governs the sensory intake and transmission of sensory information to the brain. So each chakra has its own levels. Like it has things that it governs on the physical level, the emotional level, the mental level, and the spiritual level. And by working with our chakras, we can just consciously, and each chakra has a color related to it. There's different crystals and all kinds of different things out there that can help us influence our chakras. Color is color and crystals are, I guess, two of the most common. So when we work with our chakras, we tend to, our goal is always to clear them, make them spin, in a perfect fashion, releasing any imbalances and blockages and non-beneficial energies. And when we have our chakra system in, great working order, in the way we would like to have it, like everything's working perfectly, it's kind of like everything working perfectly in your home. Like, your AC works, your heat works, your stove works, your fridge works, your shower works. You can get a glass of water. You can, everything's working. So everything's running smoothly. When something's broken, you could still live in your house, but it's not as comfortable. Like if your water's only cold, or you have to take a cold shower, whatever. So working with our chakras allows us to be in more energetic balance and harmony, and it also allows us a greater chance of opening to animal communication, to our psychic gifts, to connecting with those beings on the other side, or aliens, or whatever it is that we're going to communicate with. It's like our chakras almost function as a go-between between us and the invisible realm. I think that's the way I like to think of them anyhow.
Wow.
So, speaking of aliens, have you ever talked to one of them?
I haven't. Well, I shouldn't say that. I feel like when I've worked, I haven't consciously tried to talk to aliens, let's just say that. But I feel like when I've worked with when I work with healing teams, when I mentioned our healing team, like earlier, we have like our ancestors, our loved ones on the other side, both human and animal. We might have angels and archangels and ascended masters and different guides. Like I said, I mentioned Edgar Casey, and could be our grandmother, our dog, whatever. But I also believe that we also have beings from other star systems as well in our healing team. That like I learned the concept of having a healing team when I took a training in the early 90s with a man by the name of Jeff Levine. He was from South Africa and lived in Ontario, Canada at the time. And I took his body alignment training, all 4 levels, plus his vortex alignment training after that. And on our final night of graduating from one of the higher levels, we had this meditation out in his boathouse down by the lake, which was a magical portal in itself. And we had this, we did this whole process where we doused out this sentence to connect with other beings and call them in to help us with this healing. And I remember, I don't know how I remember this, because sometimes I don't remember what I had for lunch or breakfast that day, but I remember the first part of it, and it was like this mantra we were saying, and it was like we radiate sound at encounters with, it was like some sort of extraterrestrial beings or something. And we all had instruments, and we had this, like, we had smudged the whole room, and it was just this experience that was like no other experience I've had. And I felt like we called them all in. And I'm talking maybe Octurians and, Pleiadians and whatever, but it wasn't like I was talking to one specific UFO, if you know what I mean. So we did have I've had some pretty out there experiences in my life, but I just haven't set out to communicate with, UFOs.
Well, a lot of times communicating with some aliens can be a gray area.
Same goes for whales.
There you go.
How's that for a comeback?
Boy.
Yeah.
All right, Barbara, you got another question?
Oh,
Well, I'm just,
hang on,
it's,
I better go. I was
ahead.
just say, with whales communication, they would have their own podcast.
Yes, they would.
You're full of them tonight, Jeff.
All right, Barbara.
well, I'm just waiting for Jeffrey to.
I'm out of puns at the moment. I'm sure more to come.
He's very punny tonight.
Yeah.
Sure, there are people who will debate that, but.
Well, I just find it, it's fascinating just the possibilities once that door is open, not just to communication, but to other aspects of your life, for example. I'm sure your group is a lot more aware of practically everything at this point, correct?
Yeah. This, I don't know if you've seen my book at all, Barbara, but the subtitle of my book is called Bark Name Meow. But the subtitle is Awaken to the Transformative Wisdom of Your Companion Animal to Activate Your Soul's Highest Calling. And my particular specialty in this work is really to learn this. And I think I said earlier that I think of this as the path of mastery to the soul. And I think of every person when they embark on this work and increasing their consciousness in any way starts to really help people to be able to connect more fully to their soul's highest calling. Like, I believe that each of us comes in with a soul's divine mission. And again, we're all like snowflakes. Yours will be different than mine, will be different than Jess, will be different than Kat's, etc. And and I didn't mean to leave anybody out. I know I only said three names, but you get what I'm saying. So I believe that as we embark on any of this work in other realms and higher consciousness and developing ourselves further, I believe that we actually open the door for activating our soul's highest calling. And for me, animals are the conduit, so to speak. And anybody who loves animals, I believe, can that can be the door in for them. If you love aliens, that could be the door in for you. Or if you love angels, that could be the door in for you, or whatever it is. If you love talking to those on the other side, I love doing that. And I do it more with animals than humans on the other side, but I do both. But if that is your goal, is to talk about those who have crossed it, through mediumship or whatever it is, I believe that helps us to really awaken our soul's divine mission and become more of who we really are and we're meant to be in this lifetime. Yeah. And I believe I don't focus a ton on previous lives, but I believe experiences we've had in previous lives bring us to where we are today as well.
Exactly.
Wow. Kat, you got another question? No.
Well, I would just kind of ask exactly, Lynn, how people can get in touch with you and perhaps take your classes.
Right. So my website is lynnmckenzie.com, and Lynn is Lynn. And McKenzie is McKenzie, or for those in Canada, ZIE.com. Canada and the rest of the world. So if you want to know more about my new book, Bark, Name, Meow, you can just go to lynnmckenzie.com/books with a plural with the S at the end. And you'll find all the information about my book there. And down at the bottom of that page, you can actually read the first 2 chapters free with the Look Inside feature. And I have I have a webinar where you can. It's a free webinar. And if you go to my website, once you're on my website, way over at the top right hand corner, it says free training. Excuse me, my allergies are really getting to me now. And if you click that free training button, you not only receive an amazing little training, and it's in a beautifully illustrated booklet, downloadable, but you also get invited to a free 90-minute webinar. And that webinar gets into a lot of what I do, what this work does, and it introduces the training and offers, I think, something like 60% off or something like that. So wow. If you're at all interested in this work, I'd go and grab that free training, if nothing else. But oh yeah, and you can read all about me and on different pages in that website.
Fantastic, thank you.
My history and all of what I do and have done.
Board page, I'm going to have all of these links, including her YouTube and Twitter, her YouTube channel and Twitter and all. So
yeah, my Facebook page is the most active. The animal. I think it's animal alchemy. Yeah, that's we do the most there, and I think that also goes to Twitter and Instagram. I don't know how to do most of that stuff. I know Facebook the best, but we also have a ton of videos on YouTube as well.
Wow.
People do the technical stuff for me. It's enough for me to just go to other realms. Yeah. I let them handle the technology.
That's pretty much me too. I'm not exactly up on everything, but I try. Mess up sometimes, but I try.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we only got just about a minute left, and probably a little less than a minute. But I want to take time to thank you for being with us tonight, and I want you to stay on till after we're off, and we'll thank you.
Yes, it was my pleasure to be here, and I really believe that it is a gift to everyone to be able to learn this for themselves. It opens so many avenues and makes life a lot better. So I encourage people to learn as much as they can about it.
All right. Well, next week I know we'll have Thomas Wortman, and I've got a couple others that's supposed to be with them in a round table. I'm still waiting for the answer back on another one. So even if neither one of the other two can make it, we'll still have Thomas Wortman on next week. So we'll get caught up on a lot of this stuff about UFOs that's around. So with that, we're going to run. This is Henry Foister.
Everett Gould.
Barbara Duncan.
Cat Gash.
And we will see you next week at the same time. So good night, everybody, and stay safe.
Night.
Good night.
You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. Join us again next week at the same time for more of the Paranormal